Hello, everybody, and welcome to TalentSmartEQ's Emotional Intelligence for Your Everyday Life. We're so excited to have you here as you are all getting comfortable and joining us right now. In the comment section over on the right side of your screen, let us know where you are in the world and maybe tell us why you joined us as well. We are so excited because we have such a great conversation today. We are going to be talking about transforming law enforcement with emotional intelligence. And wait till you hear what we've got to tell you. It's going to be exciting. Before I introduce my guest, and as you can see, I just have one guest today because I don't need more than one. I want to remind you that we are the world's premier provider of emotional intelligence, both programs and assessments around the world. We're based in San Diego, California. I am David Brzozowski. I'm the Senior Director of Training and Delivery Operations. I'm based in Pittsburgh. Thank you for joining us from Idaho. Hello, Isabel. Thanks for joining us. Let me actually introduce my guest, my good friend, my colleague. This is TalentSmartEQ's Vice President of Law Enforcement and Government, Dr. Greg Campbell. Greg has worked in the law enforcement field for over 27 years. And he is working with police departments literally around the globe, bringing emotional intelligence to be a part of their solutions. So Greg, I want to welcome you back. Phyllis, thank you for joining us from Seattle. Greg, why don't we just get started? And if you wouldn't mind, just kind of set the stage for us. Like share a bit about your background, before we get into the EQ side of things. Talk to us a little bit about you. Hello, Paco. Welcome from California, by the way.
First of all, David and others, thank you. I'm excited to be on this call today. Y'all gonna see me probably jumping through the screen. And let me just get this out the way. Hey, Phyllis in Seattle. So it's good to have you all on. But David, it's exciting to be on this call with you to share behind the badge. What's happening in law enforcement with TalentSmart partnering with departments from the East Coast to the West, Canada, and even the UK to transform policing. It is amazing what's happening out there. And I'm excited about to share some of the things that are happening with all the audience today.
Excellent. Your background in law enforcement. Talk to us a little bit about, you don't have to take us through every year, but 27 years is a long time, and I know you've done some other things, but could you give us a little chronology of your world before we talk about the emotional intelligence part?
Sure. I spent 27 years in federal law enforcement, proudly serving as a postal inspector for the United States Postal Inspection Service. And for those of you who don't know who that agency is, it's the oldest federal law enforcement agency, and Benjamin Franklin was the first postal inspector. David, throughout my career, I started out as a frontline agent in Oakland, California, and worked my way up to second in charge of the whole country as deputy chief postal inspector, and had an amazing career. Matter of fact, I would say I didn't work one day in my life. I loved every day of being a United States postal inspector. From an academic standpoint, I obtained my PhD from Walden University in management with an emphasis in leadership and organizational change, and had a great experience at Walden because they focus on social change. And my research was actually looking at leadership styles and emotional intelligence of law enforcement executives. So I call myself a pracademic. 27 years of law enforcement experience, academic experience on the other side, and bringing those two things together to transform people's lives. Better EQ leads to better lives, and that's what we believe at TalentSmart, and that's what I believe personally.
Yeah, I love that whole connection. It makes sense as to your passion about this as well, because I think coming from the field and working for Benjamin Franklin, I love that you shared that with us too. But that whole piece leading you into emotional intelligence, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about the whole idea of bringing emotional intelligence. And folks, by the way, we will interchange EQ and emotional intelligence just in case you wonder where we're going with that. But how did this come into the conversations with law enforcement? How did it all stem for you to be bringing this out there?
Yeah. So working in law enforcement and then working my way up to a C-suite executive, I had an opportunity to see the challenges of our men and women who were on the front lines of law enforcement day in and day out, working hand in hand with local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and federal law enforcement. Yeah. And here's the way I like to say it. I'll use myself as an example. In my 27 years, I've seen homicides. I've seen suicides in the line of work. I've seen vehicle accidents where individuals didn't make it to their proms or didn't make it home to have dinner with their families. And I lived off of that adrenaline, David, on a daily basis, watching and loving the job that I do. But here's the way I like to say it. The absence of illness does not equal wellness. What I mean by that, hurt people hurt people. And so as you think about growing up as a little kid, we learned how to spell words by writing them over and over, 10 times or 20 times. And then we learned as we got a little older that a picture is worth 1,000 words. When you think of law enforcement, every incident they respond to, they write a report, a detailed report, so they could possibly recall it if they have to testify. They take pictures of every scene, every crime scene, so that they can remember and recall what happened. But when you see all of those traumatic events, whether it's in your first 6 months on the job or first 5 years on the job or 20 years on the job, what you understand, David, and what I came to understand is that there's no delete button. I managed or compartmentalized my emotions well. What I didn't know how to do was recognize, understand, and manage those emotions. And that's why I'm a part of TalentSmart, to help officers understand that, yes, they are superheroes, but they are not superhuman.
Yeah, that's such a powerful piece to be able to kind of connect those dots. My brother, as you know, was in law enforcement for nearly 30 years as well. And I saw a lot of what you're talking about here, which is how do I disconnect from some of those emotional traumas that I had to deal with? And it's not being superhuman. I mean, that is exactly the case. When you put on that uniform, you're a super image to people, but you can't take those emotions and just say, well, I'm going to throw them over here. And I also want to make sure I give everybody who's listening in on us, please feel free, throw a question if you have for Greg into the comment section there, or any comments. Love that Christian made the comment about the pracademic. Yes, absolutely. And Paul in Florida, thank you for joining us as well. So here's what I'd love to hear a little bit from you. Since you're with us here in TalentSmart for, it's about 2 years now. Is that correct?
Today is the start.
Is it really?
Today is the start.
I love it. Well, happy anniversary. 2 years. Wow, that is amazing. So I'd love for you to share some of your observations, with some of the teams in law enforcement that you've been working with. And like you mentioned earlier, it's not just here in the United States. We have definitely gone across the pond, up north. So what are you seeing and what are you hearing with the teams that you've been working with thus far?
Yeah, the exciting thing about what I do at TalentSmart and have the blessing of getting up every day to do, David, is not what we see in the media or social media as it relates to policing, but I get a chance to go behind the badge.
Yeah.
What's happening behind the doors at those police departments? Here's just one issue that I want to highlight to you. There was a recent article that I read about hiring the nationwide shortage of police officers across the country. As you look at the screen, Chicago is down over 2,400 officers, and Los Angeles 600, New York City 4,000 officers. Seattle, Phyllis, is down over 400 officers, between 2020 and 2022. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a community without policing. Matter of fact, the father of policing, his name was Robert Peel. He said the police are the public and the public are the police.
Yeah, wow.
Emotional intelligence allows police officers, those sworn and non-sworn, to recognize, understand, and manage their emotions. And again, I'll just go back to it. I'll say it again. Hurt people, but inspired leaders inspire others. And the 4 skills of emotional intelligence helps officers deal with managing their own emotions or traumas, and then to be able to go home and be healthy and be with the ones that they love. And that's what I love doing on a daily basis.
Wow. First of all, I want to say this image is a little disturbing. I mean, these numbers are crazy. I mean, I'm going to New York City in a few weeks, and I am just thinking about 4,000 officers not in place that should be right now, because that's the shortage we have. That's what I'm reading here, right?
Yeah, David, that's correct. And let me just say this. Let me just get this out. I think policing is one of the most noblest professions that you could ever be in. But if our perception, our lens of policing is a negative one and not a positive one, then who are going to be our future police officers? That's the question today. Who's going to protect our communities? Who's going to serve our communities? And it's not just enough to recruit new police officers. What I'm seeing, David, and working with these new police chiefs and sheriffs and administrators is how do we retain the people that we recruit? And so I call it from hiring to retiring. We have to focus on the health and well-being of every sworn and non-sworn employee of every police department in this country, because it matters.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing this particular, image here, which is, literally that's powerful. And this is just 6 of the police departments that we see.
Yes.
So let me ask you this, and I asked our producer, you can go ahead and take that down. But I don't know if you have the answers, but just for all your time that you've spent in this field, where do you think these numbers why do you think they've grown so much? Now, looking at some of the powerful numbers, New York City stands out as the 4,000, but you're still looking at Chicago at 2,400, and some of the others that just don't look like they could possibly function. But where in your opinion is that coming from, that we're down that many?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons. First, let me say that, and I won't be able to cover them all.
Sure.
In answering a question that you have, because there's other questions that you want to ask. But let me just throw out a few reasons.
Yeah.
It's the perception of police officers today, due to a number of national events that have not been good or a positive light on law enforcement, impacts how you see yourself as a police officer often. And so what you find is these officers who have been a part of protecting and serving their communities for years are now saying it's time for me to go. So we're losing experienced officers on the back end. But on the front end, we don't have the ability to hire this younger generation of young people who say, is that a profession that I want to be a part of? Is that a profession that I feel proud to be able to say, I'm a police officer? Well, I have an answer for you if you're out there listening. Yes, it's a profession that you can proudly hold your head up and say, I am a police officer. The way we're doing that, from Louisiana to West Virginia to Colorado to South Dakota to San Francisco, departments that we're working with across the country, we're seeing them understand how to treat their new officers, bringing emotional intelligence in from the hiring standpoint, right from onboarding, providing those new officers a mentor. What we're seeing across the country is when you introduce emotional intelligence in the onboarding and hiring process, that use of force goes down. Ethical or misconduct issues go down.
Yeah.
More importantly, officer wellness actually goes up. Emotional intelligence gives the officers the skills to understand how to recognize and understand and manage their emotions. A police officer, David, I'll finish the question with this. Any police officer, even those who are on the call, we can count how many times in our career that we've had to use our firearm. We can count probably in our career how many times we've had to use our taser. Why not give officers the most important weapon that they can use every single day? And that's their brain. Yeah. How to recognize, understand, and manage the emotions of your mind. And they can use that every single day to bring wellness to the job and the communities they serve, but more importantly, to have healthy homes to be able to go back to the people that they love. I'll leave it because I could talk about that all day. David.
No, I love that. So let's kind of continue this conversation about like where you see emotional intelligence fitting into a department's world, because I would imagine that there's such a difference in like some of the small town departments as compared to some of the larger like state police departments. Yet EQ,
Yeah.
its reach can be a game changer for anyone. So where are you seeing, because I know you're working with a combination of some state departments as well as with some smaller departments that are just as important. Where are you seeing it fit? Because you mentioned a little bit about in the onboarding, and I'd love for you to expand upon that a little bit, but also where else are you seeing this really fit within a program?
David, that question is so powerful. Matter of fact, you're like the Oprah Winfrey of LinkedIn. You know, one of my friends is on the call. His name is Paul Wilson. Paul is a big softball guy. You just lobbed that one up for me, David. That's a wonderful question. Here's where EQ fits in law enforcement, sworn and non-sworn.
Yeah.
We're seeing departments bringing into their hiring process, onboarding right from the very start. The reason why that's important is because police departments spend a lot of money up front to recruit, from background investigations, medical examinations, polygraphs. It's a lot of money that goes in up front. Then you don't want to just recruit and not retain those workers. So it's increasing retention in police departments. I'll mention one really quick. Louisiana State Police. Shout out to the leadership of Louisiana State Police. Shout out to you. They're bringing emotional intelligence right in at the academy. Their last academy class had 33 new cadets. At the 10th week of that academy, they still had 33 cadets. That had never been done in the history of the Louisiana State Police. So what we started to say and what they started to say is 33 in, 33 out. So imagine New York, Phoenix, Seattle, all those police, Chicago that were on the screen. Imagine if you can recruit and then retain the people that you recruit. The next thing that's important, David, is departments are incorporating emotional intelligence into officer well-being.
Okay.
That's important. You have to care about the people who protect the communities that they're there. Make sure that they are good. And that's why Phyllis is on. I know Phyllis does work with the Seattle Police Department and does a great job of providing them mental support. That's critical. Emotional intelligence doesn't supplant that. It supports that. And we got to change the barriers of officers feeling as if they can't raise their hand and say, I need help. They are our superheroes, but they are not superhumans. Let me just quickly say where else we're using it. In leadership development. As more officers, senior officers retire, then younger officers are moving into those leadership positions. We have to train those officers well. I just read an article this morning that said 70% of managers say that they have no training to lead their teams. We got to change that. So departments are incorporating intelligence into their leadership training. We're also seeing departments create mentoring programs, and we're using our assessment tool to identify what skills to develop. And then in the field, training officers are being trained in emotional intelligence. And now we're helping departments have a structured mentoring program. And then lastly, community policing or community relations. Emotional intelligence is a great tool to teach your community about what's happening behind the badge, behind the doors of police departments, so that they understand what police officers go through on a day-to-day basis. When you don't have information, you make up your own story. Emotional intelligence with social awareness and relationship management helps police officers or police departments communicate more effectively with the communities that they serve. So, David, like I said, that was a wonderful question, and thank you for asking it.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things I pulled from that is that keyword of emotional intelligence supports all the other solutions that one is trying to make. And that's such a critical piece, is we're not saying that EQ is the answer. We're saying emotional intelligence helps you support the other pieces of the puzzle. That's the same thing really in all of the world. I mean, that we're bringing emotional intelligence to. And for those of you who maybe are joining us and don't even know the foundational core skills of EQ, let me take you through really high level to make sure everybody's on. It's emotional intelligence is a skill that can be worked on. It can be improved. And it does have 4 core skills. 2 of them are personal competences. So you have the self-awareness and self-management. But then you also have the social competences, which is social awareness and relationship management. So when you think about how they interact with each other, I think, what Greg's talking about here is the entire job of a police officer. Like, you're always trying to be aware of what's going on with you. Why are you reacting the way? While you're also interacting with others that you have maybe never met before, or maybe you're dealing with some people that you've seen out there before. But emotional intelligence helps that with that foundational thinking. I know, Greg, you have a video clip that we want to be able to share. And it's from the West Virginia EQ project. I know Errol Randall's on this. I want you to give us a little heads up, like, what are we going to watch here? And then I'll watch it and then bring it back. Any questions anybody has, please share them with us. And then we're going to talk about this. So, Greg, tee this up for us, if you would.
Sure, thank you. And Marianne, I'll come back to your question of am I working in Minnesota? I'll come back to you. What you're getting ready to see is a video of Errol Randall. He is a retired police officer from Charleston, West Virginia, and they brought emotional intelligence to Charleston, West Virginia Police Department. It has been so successful in Charleston, West Virginia, that shout out to Senator Manchin, who then sponsored a bill to bring emotional intelligence to every police officer in the state of West Virginia. Senator Manchin, high fives, virtual high fives to you. So we're excited about that. Now, let me share with you. Let me let you hear from Errol Randall. You're going to hear 2 clips from the project coordinator of the West Virginia EQ project. Go ahead and show the video clip.
The last 10 years of my tenure with the Charleston Police Department, I was our strategic planning officer. So I was responsible for bringing developing innovative projects and initiatives. And so one of the things that we had started to really look at and hear about is emotional intelligence. So began to do a little research on emotional intelligence and realize that there's an appraisal that we can have that can introspectively tell us about ourselves. And I was like, wow, I was just so intrigued by that. There were some events that happened nationally that really actually spurred this really moving forward. And that one major event was the death of George Floyd. I just remember that day happening, and I was retired then, but man, I had such a feeling within me to ask the question, what can we do? What can we do to prevent that from happening again? Because a lot of that was emotionally charged, and not being able to separate the emotional brain and the emotional decisions from the rational decisions. And
wow, good stuff there. So let's go to the first clip again real quick, not to review it again, but what I found that Errol talked about there was the assessments, right? Because that is that's one thing that we provide with all of our programming. It's in our book. But I love that he said that it was an opportunity to bring them some information. So talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing happen after people take the assessment and they do some debriefing on it.
Yes. So, David, every police officer, whether sworn or non-sworn, that we train at TalentSmart receives in one of our packages the book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, 66 strategies on how they can build their emotional intelligence skills, and they get an assessment. Let me tell you why that assessment is important, as Errol stated. An assessment does not say who you are, it says where you're at. And that's important when you're looking at building some skills. So our assessment is research-based, academically rigorous, and it's only 28 questions. And so it gives the officers, the employees who take it, a starting line to be able to say, here's what skill I should work on. I'll sort of sum it up this way. Emotional intelligence and your results from that assessment, EQ is not a destination, it's a journey. So the assessment helps you know where to start. What's your footprints in the sand? And so it's like going to the doctor and you have a knee problem, and they just say, oh, touch your knee, it's well. But if that doctor actually does an x-ray, or better yet, an MRI, now they know exactly what's happening with your knee. Our assessment tells you exactly where you can start your journey to build your emotional intelligence skills. And that's what I loved about what Errol picked up in being a part of it.
Yeah, and I love your analogies because that's so true. Like I would not just count on myself to say, hey, my knee needs fixed XYZ, right? But that second clip really hit me. It's so intuitive for him to consider that when he was dealing with the George Floyd situation, and he talked about that being emotionally charged. And that whole powerful thing. I mean, have you guys talked about that, you and Errol?
You know, the first time, no, we have not.
Okay.
So, Errol, if you're out there watching, we got to have that conversation. But
yeah,
I've not talked to Errol about that.
Yeah.
But what I loved is Errol said he wanted to be a part of the solution. Mm-hmm. You know, across our country today, there's a lot of things going on politically, racially, that may be divisive. But emotional intelligence and building your skills helps you build unity. Helps you build unity. Matter of fact, I'm going to touch on Jay Scott. Jay Scott, I want to meet you someday. He said the powerful part about teaching emotional intelligence courses, TalentSmart's courses, is the aha moment. Mm-hmm. You're right. When you're sitting in those classes and you see you're sitting with the superheroes, those people who run towards the fire when guns are being shot, and then you watch them let down those walls and you see officers crying, you see them bearing their souls, being transparent and authentic. Oh, Jay Scott, it's powerful. Matter of fact, better yet, it's life-changing. I was with a friend of mine this week. Her name is Dr. Abiodun. She's the CEO of Urban Alliance. She said this week. She said, when you create the atmosphere in the room and people become transparent and authentic, she said, what is said here stays here. Right. So those officers being vulnerable and transparent, it stays in the room. She said, but what is learned here leaves here. Let me say that one more time. This is so good. She said, what is said here stays here, but what is learned here leaves here. And that's what we're seeing with emotional intelligence training. It's becoming contagious. Those officers who get the training are telling others. Matter of fact, we have a pilot where we're training inmates in 26 prisons across 3 states, West Virginia, Florida, and Mississippi. Emotional intelligence is so powerful that those 26 books that those 26 individuals have, there's a waiting list in their living units or their pods for other inmates to get the book. If it's changing inmates' lives, it can change anybody's life. And this is what the inmates are saying. If I had this information previously, I wouldn't be locked up today. So it's not just on the law enforcement side. It's how we can reduce recidivism. Dr. Michael Benson, I saw his name. He's on the call. He's doing work with recidivism of inmates, ex-offenders. Powerful stuff. That's how powerful EQ is.
Yeah, so true. And I love one of the comments that Jay Scott said about, I wish I had learned, this 5, 10, 20 years ago. And also some of the other comments that are in here are great. I was sharing with Greg earlier that I just got done doing a keynote with the amazing group, the Alzheimer's Association. And one of the quotes I used was from Maya Angelou, which is, when you know better, you do better. And I think what's so powerful about that comment is bringing emotional intelligence into law enforcement allows them to have this knowledge that they can do something with their emotions, right? That it is a skill that I can help myself with. I love how you said it earlier today about it being that other tool, right? All the other tools that they have to do their job. So let's talk about, actually, I know you wanted to respond to an earlier question that was in the chat here from, where is it?
She was out of Minnesota.
Yes,
Marianne, I am not in Minnesota. We are not training any police departments in Minnesota. So I would love to be connected to anybody in Minnesota that's willing to see how powerful this content is. I also wanted to pick up on one other statement. Kristen Christian, thank you for your comments and just your engagement in the call. Christian talked about being a Marine. I don't know if my colleague is on the call, Dr. DeMai, or future Dr. Demias Perdue. D, if you're on, I just spoke it into existence. But Demias Perdue is responsible for our military. Oh, Christian, it's changing military soldiers' lives. Emotional intelligence is the answer. Just like law enforcement, the military, we're trained to suppress our emotions, but we're not taught how to manage those emotions. So, Christian, emotional intelligence, the military is one of our highest customers. So it touches them as well. So thank you for that, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Christian, for bringing that up. So I'm curious because I'm sure that some people might be saying, like, so what are the next steps, right? Yeah. So how does, think about a police department who maybe have read the book, or they're just sitting here listening to this conversation and they're like, I wonder if I could get buy-in for this, right? How do you help with anybody getting buy-in for a skill that many may call a soft skill, or not a relevant skill? We don't call it a soft skill here at TalentSmart, by the way. We call it a power skill because it is just that. So what would be your advice for getting buy-in for anybody? How do you start that conversation? And I think that's not just for law enforcement, but also thinking about what you just said in the military too. It's another area that sometimes you might have that as a not so sure we're going to have that conversation. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I don't know Pete Blank, but Pete Blank, thank you for being on. You just put something in the chat box that's a direct segue to my answer. Pete said they just rolled out EQ alignment training in Central Alabama at one police department. He said, but the key is the chief. So, Pete, you're right. What I've seen, David, is the most successful police departments are the ones who start from the top. That's West Virginia. That's Louisiana State Police. That's Aurora. All those police departments that are really doing well and making traction. Even San Francisco PD, some of the ones that we're working with across the country. If it starts out at the top, what you do is you lead by example. We've all heard it, but you got to walk it out. You got to let your feet do the talking. And when it starts at the top, we start with what I call executive overviews. I know chiefs are busy, sheriffs are busy, leaders are busy, but we at TalentSmart, we can do executive overviews in your department just to help you understand what is it that we do, how impactful can EQ be, and then start to roll it down throughout your leadership and then to your frontline supervisors, and more importantly, in your hiring process. That's why I call it from hiring to retiring. Everyone needs it, sworn and non-sworn, in a police department, and you will see immediate impact in your department. So I want to invite you, if you're interested in an executive overview and you listen to this video or you're on the call, reach out to TalentSmart, and I am happy to come do an executive overview for your department and to help you see how emotional intelligence can transform not only your department, but the lives of the people who you are leading. Leaders matter.
Yeah, thank you for that whole piece, Greg. And our producer, thank you, is putting in how you connect with us. So in the comments section, there is no expectation except for you just are interested in information. There is a section there that you can go ahead and get information specifically about our policing programming, where Greg is our lead person on that. But also for those of you who maybe are not looking for it in policing, but in other areas, I think what Greg just said is important as well. It has to come from leadership to start with. It doesn't normally work well if the leaders say, you go ahead and take this. We're not going to. It's got to be a place where we're connecting the dots with everybody. So both links there, please, as you're going through with this conversation with us, feel free to just reach out just for more information. So Greg, what else have we not touched on that you think is important that we should bring forward to bring EQ into law enforcement?
Just a couple of things. One of the things that I just missed in that last question, David, and again, my friend Paul Wilson will know exactly what I'm talking about. the reason why leadership is important to start there and then cascade it throughout your organization to scale is because you create a common language of emotional intelligence across your organization. What you don't want is one group of individuals to speak a language and then they're leading or working with others that don't know the language they're speaking. So it's important to create a common language across your departments. Our training and that appraisal comes with 16 online lessons that you can use after the training to sustain your learning after you go through the in-person or virtual training. And it's just powerful. I'll sum it up like this, David, for those who may think that EQ is just a soft skill. My suggestion to you is emotional intelligence is for anybody with a heartbeat, as Demise Purdue would say, and anybody with a brain. Because every human being goes through about 60,000 thoughts a day. And about 200 of those thoughts are emotional triggering events. The question is, will you be able to recognize, understand, and manage those emotions? In law enforcement, we get intelligence on a car before we stop it. Who's in the car? How many people are in the car? Is the car stolen when we run the license plates? Before we go into a house to execute a search warrant or enter that house, who's in the house? Are there weapons registered to the house? We get information, intelligence on that house. Yeah. Before we approach a person on the street, we get intelligence on that person. How tall are they? You know, what are they wearing? Is it 90 degrees and they're wearing 3 coats? Is there a bulge on the side of their right side? We get intelligence on them. So if we get intelligence on a car, we get intelligence on a person before we stop them, we get intelligence on a house, then why wouldn't we have emotional intelligence on ourselves? I'm going to leave you with that question. You answer it. It'll change your life. Emotional intelligence makes everybody better. It's good for everyday lives.
Yeah, powerful, powerful, Greg. So listen, I know this year you are going to be hitting some more conferences. Last year, you were at several around the country. So any preview yet? I know we haven't finalized our schedule, but where are you thinking that anybody can see you in person as well out there? And I also know you have a gift to give to somebody. I'm not sure if you kind of like looked at some of the names out there.
Yeah, David, I'm gonna take a risk. I told you, you said I could do one gift. I want to do 2. Okay. One for Mary Ann in Minnesota, because I want to get into Minnesota.
Yeah, I love that.
Floyd, we all know that's where it started, and we're not there. So I want to be in Minnesota. So Mary Ann, we'd like to send you a free emotional intelligence book. And then the next one is Kristen. Christian, you have been actively engaged in that conversation in the chat box. So I'd love to send you a free emotional intelligence 2.0 book as well. So if you'll communicate with our producer in the background, we'll get your information and we'll send you one of those books. Carmina, I see your question. You said, I want to be certified. Guess what, Carmina? I want to certify you. So you can reach out to me. But also, I'll be at the Noble Conference, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives this year. I'll be at IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police. I'll be at the CIT Conference, the Crisis Intervention Teams Conference. I'll be at one of the most powerful conferences that I went to last year. If there's any ladies in law enforcement on this call or listening to this video, the best conference I attended last year was the Women's Leaders in Law Enforcement Conference in San Diego. Wow, was that conference amazing? And I'll be there this year at that Women's Leaders in Law Enforcement. And then finally, David, me and my colleague, Demise Purdue, will be at the ATD conference in New Orleans this year. So that's just a few conferences. Again, reach out to me. As you can see, I'm passionate about what I do. And I'd love to meet you. So reach out to me.
Absolutely. If you've never had a chance to see Greg in person, it is a powerful hour or however much time he has on that stage. Please do. Greg, we could talk all day about this. I know you and I go round and round all the time, but I'll tell you what we're doing is just helping with what we know works in life, and that's emotional intelligence. Yeah. It's extra powerful here with law enforcement because of how important that job is. So I hope that if anybody out there who's been joining us now or watching the recording, if any of this resonates to you, please reach out to us here at TalentSmart. Go to our website, hit up one of our links that our producer has put into the private chat. And by all means, if our producer could do that one more time, that would be great. We are a worldwide organization that is here to help you support any solutions that you are looking. We are global. We have a team of people who are here to help just have a conversation with you, but also that will deliver these programs. And like Greg already mentioned, is we can certify people within your organization to bring this powerful program. And we have multiple programs. We will fit the right one for you. By the way, we are going to be back at the end of February, on February the 29th. Yes, it's a leap year, so why not have a new LinkedIn Live on that day? This time, we're going to be talking on our emotional intelligence for your everyday life about emotional intelligence in the healthcare industry, another one of our amazing industries that need emotional intelligence too. I am bringing on some extraordinary women from Children's of Alabama Hospital in Alabama. I had the pleasure a year ago, almost to the day, of certifying a group who are bringing this program to everybody at their hospital. We're going to talk about how emotional intelligence helps to make everybody in the healthcare industry stronger and more effective. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us. Any more questions you have for us, reach out to us. And remember, emotional intelligence is for your everyday life. We will see you again the next time.